Changeworking, moving minds for change that lasts.
Hello, friends, and welcome to Changeworking, a show for practitioners and coaches who help their clients create change. My name is Ruckus, and as always, I'll be in conversation with James Tripp. Today, we explore the paradox of being change workers who sometimes struggle to apply our own tools to ourselves. We talk about the power of being genuine with our clients and how sometimes the most effective thing we can do is to simply be human. I know this is something that many practitioners are going to relate to, so let's get right into it. Here's my conversation with James about helping yourself, helping others, and being human.
I kind of got into self-hypnosis over the last year, which I wasn't really big into before. If anyone's listening to this and they think, well, that's kind of odd, if you do hypnosis, you're a quote-unquote hypnotist, amongst other things, and you're doing it with other people, why wouldn't you do it with yourself? Well, that's a jolly good question. And I think it's true of most practicing hypnotists. In fact, I was talking to a guy called Tim Box a few weeks ago, and he said when he went on his first hypnosis training, he was so excited to be on it, and he was really disappointed that he didn't seem to be able to be hypnotized. So he didn't get anything out of being hypnotized. He was really kind of like, crestfallen about this. And he said to the trainer, just nothing happens when I'm being hypnotized. And the trainer said, did you come here to be hypnotized or to become a hypnotist? And he went, oh, well, I came in to become a hypnotist. He said, well, don't worry so much about whether you can be hypnotized. Now, this was an old school hypnosis trainer. So this guy from that point on was like, okay, so I'm a crap hypnotic subject, but I'm just going to hypnotize other people. And he's good at what he does, this guy is. But the other way of looking at it is, I'm a great believer in the more you value something, the more powerfully you will utilize it. One of the reasons I've been doing a lot of self-hypnosis is because I wanted to come to value certain things more deeply than I did. Specifically, and I talked about this in the other recording we did, how I'd kind of dismissed hypnotic trance. I was much more of a suggestionist, and I kind of dismissed hypnotic trance. So one of the things I wanted to do is I wanted to come to value. I wanted to explore classical hypnotic trance from multiple directions. So I started doing it more with people, but also taking myself into trancey experiences and exploring the kind of inner realm of quote unquote trance, so to speak. So it was very valuable to do that. The other reason that I did this is because I was ill over the last year. I've only really kind of recovered from this in the last 2-3 months, something like that. And it started last November when I got COVID for the second time, and I just didn't seem to recover. I ended up with a kind of chronic fatigue thing going on. I couldn't think straight. I was not forming new memories, couldn't remember anything about anything half the time. And I would get exhausted just having a conversation. Like a conversation like this would give me a hangover. I'd have to go to bed afterwards. I got so desperate. I just couldn't get this thing to shift. I got so desperate that I started to do a lot of kind of like self-hypnosis and inner work, almost out of desperation, to try and get it to shift. Because I also had like terrible headaches with it all the time as well, and a real kind of pressure up in my head. And so I was doing things to sort of shift and alleviate the physical symptoms. So this brought me into I suppose, an exploration of self-hypnosis. And I vowed to keep doing it because I wanted to come to value it more deeply, because I believe that hypnosis practitioners will become better hypnosis practitioners through learning to manipulate their own being and states. This is what Erickson did. Erickson came to hypnosis through self-hypnosis, although he didn't call it that when he was originally doing it. But that's how he came to have a deep appreciation for the power of, let's call it the power of the mind, so to speak.
I was interested in general, this idea of helping yourself. And I was having a conversation with another hypnotist, and she was in like a foul mood for whatever reason. And I was just kind of like, well, what do you typically do? We have so many different methods for getting out of that. And she's like, I typically just am in a foul mood. That's it. But if a client called her right then and said, I'm in a foul mood, she would immediately go into, well, let's do this and this. and she would help them out of that.
Right.
But it's like, but do you often do that with yourself? And it's the same way. I find myself like, oh, wow. Like when I was mad yesterday, I could have stopped and done this process or this that I know I've done 100 times with clients and helped them. And I'm just curious about that as a phenomenon, even among people that have tools and skills that they use to help other people. They don't always utilize them for their own needs, for their own self.
Right. It is interesting. And I think, speaking for myself, I've said this elsewhere, but I shall say it again here. When I originally got into NLP, I had no intention of doing client work with anybody. It was not anywhere on my radar. That wasn't in my mind. I got into NLP for me, 100%. At the time I got into it, I didn't have particularly good self-image. I had a lot of anxiety issues. I was afraid of a lot of things. I didn't really feel like I was in the driving seat of my life at all. And I was making some decisions at the time that were potentially going to be taking me in a very different direction in life, but they were terrifying me as well. It was very, very frightening for me to be taking this new path in life. So I discovered NLP at just the right time for that. And I just thought, right, I'm going to use this stuff. I'm going to rebuild myself. I'm going to change everything. Particularly one of the things that I wanted to transcend was the anxiety, because that was exhausting and crippling for me. And there were other things I wanted to change as well. Initially, a lot of the flaws I saw were in my external behaviors, like, I wasn't charismatic enough or influential enough or whatever. So I was working on that, but I also realized there was an inner side to it as well. So I really got into this. And the reason that I love NLP is because I was using it for 4 or 5 years to change my experience of myself and my life and my options and my choices and all of this. So I learned to transcend anxiety. I learned to be able to shift the gears of my mind more effectively and better. And I got really into it for this reason. I only started working with other people. I wasn't interested in hypnosis when I started working with other people. Wasn't interested at all. I just thought, all this great stuff I've used myself, self-directed, mind shifting, whatever. I just coach other people in it. I'll say, right, here's how you do it. And they'll go, wow, that's great. And they'll do it. But they didn't. I would coach other people. I go, here's how you do it. And they go, oh, yeah, that's interesting. That's food for thought. But I've got this problem whereby, and I'd be like, oh. So they didn't seem to want to take the tools and really use them, or most people didn't. So I was thinking, well, how can I help these people change this? They don't want to do it the way I did it. They want something to do it for them. So that's when I started to drift more into the kind of hypnosis side of things, the more Ericksonian side of things. It's like, well, how can I kind of lure them into changing the way that they've got this running in their head? But to this day, I'm still a big fan of self-directed stuff, of personal mastery, I sometimes call it. This is my first, truest love. And I know that so much is possible because I did so much to transform my own self and my own experience. We get caught up all the time in whatever state we're in, mode of mind we're in. We get pulled into this. We get angry about something, and all we're doing is fixating on the things that we're angry about. Maybe we get angry with somebody who we have, our primary partner, our spouse, our loved one. And in that moment, we're really bloody annoyed. And what we lose everything else of value about the relationship. We get stuck in that mode. We can't shift gears out of it. I really value being able to shift gears. Most people don't. When they're stuck in anger, they're stuck in the righteousness. They are right and the other person is wrong. That's the only way you can perpetuate anger, right? So to let go of anger is to let go of your rightness. And that's really challenging for people to do because they don't have a higher value to connect with. Would I prefer to be right, or would I prefer to be somebody who has a higher level of personal mastery? Would I prefer to be somebody who could shift gears of my mind and connect back into everything that was being excluded from my thoughts in that moment? Now, I value that stuff and I love that stuff, so I practice it and I rehearse it. I do it over and over. That's how you develop skill. Internal skills, you develop by repetition, right? Now, I've said this about choice. I love the idea of living at the level of choice. The question is, where do you choose from? because, I mean, you're into parts work and stuff like that. So which part is making the choice? So what do you choose from? And I like the idea of developing a part that you could call the I that chooses, the transcendent self. Now, to develop that part, the first thing is to develop the ability to step back from, to be apart from the state you were a part of, to go into a subject-object relationship with something you are subject to. So if you're subject to anger, the anger has you. And you have no choice but to do whatever unfolds from that rageful state. Right? If you go, I see you, right? This is not who I am. Now you can start to step back and go, okay, I see that. I feel the feelings, right? What could this be about? So now you've got a subject-object relationship going on, right? And you might have a question like, what is everything else that goes beyond this? Now, if you can ask these questions, they can start to take you in a different direction, but you have to be able to step back from it to ask the directionalizing questions. Once you can do that, you now have a choice. Now, choice is always not that, or not this, or not this, that. It isn't ever not this. Now, this is the single biggest mistake that people make in the management of their own minds, is they try to manage themselves with not this, right? I'm going to try not to do that. I'm going to try not to bite my nails. I'm going to try not to procrastinate. I really don't want to procrastinate. I'm not going to procrastinate anymore, right? So they're always they're doing half of the choice format. No, I mustn't, right? I'm feeling anxious. Don't feel anxious. Stop it, right? That's not a choice. Stop it isn't a choice, right? Not this, that is a choice. Stop this and start that is a choice. So, like, one of the things about personal mastery, if somebody wants to become adept at shifting out of habitual states that rise up and grab them, one of the things it pays to do, yes, step back from the state, go, right, I see it, right? That is not me. That is something that is occurring within me. That is an aspect. This is why parts, just the basic parts maneuver of going, oh, there's a part of me that's angry right now. Boom, dissociation, immediate dissociation. Mm-hmm. So once you've got that and go, okay, so just notice that. And what is it that I would love that goes beyond this? Right now, if you've got pre-prepared stuff, I want to be like this, right? So, like, I don't want to be an angry person. I want to be a kind person. I want to be an expanded person. Right? My higher self would always choose that over angry. So I need to be able to access the part of me that does that other stuff. You can't just shift out of first. You have to shift out of first and into second. These are things that I really value. I've run training courses on these sorts of things. And, I know that the vast majority of people that engage with those training courses go, yeah, that's really, really interesting idea. Yeah, I can see how that would work.
Right.
But they rarely do the work of repeatedly doing this, right? They build the alternative states. They learn to shift the gears of their mind. They value doing it. Very few people do that. That's not a critique of people. It just, I'm not saying I do it because I do it, so therefore you should be able to do it, or doesn't that make me superior that I do it? I did it for selfish reasons. I learned to do that for selfish reasons because I didn't want to be a victim constantly to whatever random crap bubbled up through my system, or at least not a complete victim.
Well, let me give you a little example, and maybe this will you understand that the reason I even brought this up is just the very basic NLP values elicitation. So simple, so easy to do for yourself, no problem. And I realized I had done some version of it with several clients and never actually done it for myself. And then after a week of thinking that, I was like, I'm not going to do it for myself. Why don't I call my friend and see if she'll do it for me?
Right.
And we did it right then. Right then we did it. And I could have done it a week ago when I first had the thought. And I'm just curious about that phenomenon. We did it and I got the results I wanted. And I was like, I could have done that a week ago on myself. Why didn't I? I'm just curious. Why didn't I?
Right.
Why was it easier or better to have someone else lead that?
Well, it's easier because you can just kind of surrender to the facilitation that somebody else is doing, number one. No, number two, it kind of is trickier because you've almost got to be in two places at once. Right? You want to be in the experience that you're facilitating yourself through, but you have to sort of be slightly apart from it to facilitate it. So it's a harder piece of work to do, and you may, sometimes you have to let go and go into something, but you have to be able to bring yourself back to the facilitator mode as well. So I think it's kind of harder for that reason. It's also kind of harder because you got to want it. You got to really want to do it. We human beings procrastinate about all manner of things. We are unconsciously sorting all the time for where we put our time and attention. So if I'm going to step out and go, I'm going to now run a visual squash on myself, right? Or even on a smaller level, let me just think about this. Procrastination is an interesting thing. I'm a great procrastinator. Now, yesterday I was procrastinating about something, and I noticed that I was doing it. This is an important thing because part of procrastination is the sort of smokescreen we put in front of ourselves so we don't quite notice we do it until afterwards. We go, I've been procrastinating. But if you can catch yourself in the moment, go, procrastinating right now. So my old coach, Steve Chandler, used to say, I can solve your procrastination. Are you ready? I say, yeah. He go, do the thing you're procrastinating about. Right? Now, you could say that's a choice. And it kind of is if you go, I'm procrastinating. But the thing you're procrastinating about, you're clearly not connected to the value of it for you to do. Right? Part of the procrastination is the eradication of the value to you of the thing you're procrastinating about. So you're not connected to the value in it. Right? Maybe you're just living at the level of should and going, but I just should do it. I need to do it. Right? None of that connects to the value of it. That's just some way of trying to force yourself. So you're not connected to the value of it. You know also that there's a part that wants you to not do it, to do something else. So in the moment yesterday, I just did a parts work piece on myself. I know there's a part of me that connects to the value of it and wants to do it. And there's a part of me that wants to avoid doing it, right? Do something else. And the part that wants to avoid doing it is running the game right now. That's why I'm procrastinating. So knowing that, what I did particularly yesterday is I went, right, okay, so there's a part of me that is doing procrastination right now. So it's my first move. I'm going to do a parts work piece of myself, right? I'm going to feel the feeling of that part. Where do I experience that part in my body? I love using felt sense when I do parts work, particularly with myself, but also with clients. So I'm feeling it, right? So I see, what is it that you want, right? Well, that part wants peace and comfort and just to float along, no trouble, just to conserve energy, all of that sort of thing. That's what that part wants. It's like, so I see you, I see you, right? And I know that is not me, right? Now, I know also there's a part of me that actually wants to do this, right? When I'm in the mode of doing, there's a part that's in the mode of doing. So what is that part like, right? So I kind of activate that part of myself, connect to it, right? What am I like when I'm doing it? And why am I doing this? Why is this a value? Why is this something I really want to do that has that energy? Because when I'm doing something without procrastination, there's a certain energy to it. There's never an energy of, I should be doing this. I'm connected to some kind of flow state with doing it. So I did this with myself yesterday, and it probably took 30 to 45 seconds to do. Now, it took 30 to 45 seconds. It might have even been quicker, but I still did the process. Now, I've done the process before. I've done my own internal parts work processing before. I'm a big fan of Eugene Gendlin's focusing work, so I kind of combine parts work with focusing work. I got a kind of mishmash of that. But I've done it a lot of times. So it kind of happens reasonably quickly, almost automatically. But there are other processes that I do that I've done in the past that have now become fully automated. So as soon as I recognize something, boom, like particularly often anger or irritability. Like if I recognize that coming up, as soon as I acknowledge it, a new pathway fires that takes me out of it because I've done that pathway enough times before that it is now essentially automated. But you've got to want to do it in the first place. You see, if you don't value doing it, you won't do it. It's the same as like somebody might go, oh, I want to get strong. Well, you need to lift some weights or do some calisthenics or something like that. It's like, yeah, I know that. Yeah. So they hire a personal trainer, and when the personal trainer's there, they do it because they showed up with somebody and it made them do it.
Yes.
Right. They could have done it on their own, but they didn't. They hired the personal trainer.
I'm curious, I asked earlier and you kind of nod your head, but I don't think we got into it, let's say there's a process you could do on your own, or you could have someone else facilitate. Do you, as the client in both cases, will you actually have a neurologically different experience with someone else facilitating and get a different result? Or is there no way to know that because you can't do them both versions and test?
I think there's no way to know it, really.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's certainly been some interesting and surprising things that have happened when I've been facilitated by other people. Obviously, one of the advantages of being facilitated by somebody else, particularly if they're good and they're creative, is they're going to bring things to the facilitation that would never have occurred to you. Mm-hmm. There's that old saying, 2 heads are better than one. I think, in this instance, we can go, well, there's a super system. There's 2 people working together here. So I think there's a value in that. I think every single experience is going to be different anyway. I had somebody saying to me recently that they learned this process, this hypnosis process. The first time they'd experienced it themselves, it absolutely blew their mind. It was incredible. And since then, they hadn't been able to have the same experience again. Right? Mm-hmm. I'm like, yeah, but that's kind of the nature of things sometimes. I mean, I used to love roller coasters, and now I'm just sort of like, I'll be on there kind of like, oh, this is a bit uncomfortable, but I used to love them. It used to be such a thrill. The first time somebody tastes incredible food or something, it's like, that's amazing. But if they eat it every day, it stops being so great, right? So I think sometimes when we do something for the first time, it can be kind of quite impactful. If we're self-facilitating, I don't think, like often the first time we're doing it, we're also kind of trying to learn to do it. Mm-hmm. But if we have a first-time experience where somebody else has taken us through it, it can often be kind of a much more impactful first-time experience. But I do think there's incredible value in learning to facilitate yourself.
Do you feel like you could, or someone in general, be incredibly effective with a technique, protocol, with a client, having never experienced the actual protocol themselves?
Yeah, absolutely, definitely. I personally think there's a lot of value to be had from experiencing it from the inside, but that doesn't mean it always must be so. Some people need that, I think, more than others, or benefit from that more than others. I think I do because I'm a kind of skeptical thinker. So, I want to see some bit more proof. I want to go, no, show me deeper. So I tend to like to have an experience myself, but I don't shut that down. So when I do client work with other people, it is informed a lot by the kind of self-facilitation work that I do. No question about it. Absolutely, definitely informed by that. But it is not restricted by that, by any means. So, for example, for some reason recently, for reasons I cannot quite fathom, I've been doing a lot more visual squashes. I think I mentioned this to you before. Mm-hmm. I'm finding a lot more utility in the visual squash. Something has come alive for me in that. So I'm kind of finding myself in that place. I'm not sure if I've ever run one on myself. I might do this week, now that I've said it out loud and thought about it, but I'm not sure I've ever run a visual squash sort of in that format with myself. So I might do that. But so that's an example of something. Oh, another thing I said, like, I quite like to, make use of a kind of fast phobia cure, VK dissociation sort of format. I've never run one of those myself either.
But have you had someone else run it on you?
I have, yes. And here's the thing. It was not remotely impressive or impactful.
And was that before or after you had used it on a client?
It was before.
So then what led you to want to try it on a client if it wasn't impactful for you?
Because when I first started using fast phobia cures, it was still reasonably early on. And honestly, I just was doing whatever I had.
Right.
So when I first started running them, I'm like, well, people say this is good. It hasn't really worked for me, but this seems like a good fit right now. So screw it. I'm going to do it. And I ran them, and I'm like, well, that person really got a big shift from that. That's kind of odd. So, I've come to appreciate there are things that I've never had an impact from that I'll tell you, here's another example. I'm pretty adept with clean language. I never got much from it on the receiving end, went back in the day. Personally, I wasn't wowed by it on the receiving end of it. The thing I valued about clean language is the adaptiveness that it gave me, the ability to really work with what came through from the client. And I got great results with it, but I never had a great experience with it. Now, there might be a reason for this. The only experiences I'd ever had of clean language were in training environments. So number one, the people taking me through the process were learning themselves. But number two, the stuff that gets brought up is kind of like I got to find something to work on. Right. It's not something that really is deeply meaningful and desperate for me. My friend Andy talks about the gift of desperation, so I never had the gift of desperation. It's like, I've got to change this thing. I'm really stuck. It's just like, what should we work on with this clean language? So I think that lower level of investment, there was one of the old mesmerism books that I was reading about pointed out that there are plenty of people, it's not uncommon for people who are quite bad mesmeric subjects to suddenly become really good mesmeric subjects when they get really ill or they're really desperate or something really needs to change.
That's interesting.
Yeah, there's a motivational issue there about, the level of engagement that you're going to have with the process.
I know that I've been through, say, a week of a depression where I was not feeling at my best, but I had incredible sessions with clients that I know helped them in huge ways, because you would get the email back saying how great it was and thank you so much, while personally feeling not great at all in my life. That dichotomy is interesting to me. The difference between, again, just helping yourself versus helping other people, and how that's different.
Well, it stimulates a thought, and this again is a story that I shared before. But about 3 or 4 years ago, I had like a phase of burnout. And a number of things had occurred. I had this flu that was really terrible, the most awful flu. The one I had before Christmas just now was nothing compared to this flu back then.
Wow.
And I got like a secondary chest infection. It wasn't just a cough. It was really screwing my lungs up. And I came off the back of this flu and I threw myself straight back into work because I had a lot of commitments. And at the time, I was running a training program with a friend of mine. So we had these weekends booked out doing trainings, and I was seeing rock recovery clients for 3 days a week during the week. I was doing private clients on the other 2 days. Basically, I was working 7-day weeks, and I had them stacked up. And I came off this flu, and I went straight back into work, and I was kind of like, I still feel a bit. But it just started to get on top of me in a way that I'd never experienced before. And I was starting to feel like my circuits were fried. And I kept doing state management stuff. I kept energizing myself. I kept putting myself back in what I call a high vibration state so I could go out and be my best. And I think my system, my unconscious mind, if you like, went, no, we're gonna have to stop you, I'm afraid. You can keep consciously doing this manipulation stuff and trying to get, but no, we're gonna mess you up now. So the other thing that happened, this is just after we'd moved to Edinburgh. And because we'd moved to Edinburgh, people kept coming to stay with us and visit and stay for a week. So I wasn't even getting any downtime in the evenings. I was like having to come back from work, and then there would be people, and and I'm kind of an introvert, not really an extrovert sort of guy. So after a bit, my circuits were fried. And there was one particular occasion, I was on the tram going up to the university where I work with the military veterans, and I just felt like I wanted to cry. I just felt awful. I felt just screwed up and messed up and awful. And I was trying to put myself into a working state, which I was normally very good at doing. And it's like my whole unconscious mind was going, no, You have to stay screwed up now because you can't be trusted. You're burning yourself out. So I was on the tram and I was going to see these clients, and I thought, how can I help these people when I'm in this mess? I'm in an absolute mess and I can't get myself in my working state, but I can't not show up and cancel because these are desperate people. Some of these people are suicidal and that kind of thing. I can't just not show up, go, sorry, I wasn't feeling like it today, or at least that was my belief. So I stopped, and this is again a piece of self-process work. And I asked myself, okay, so I can't shift this. So where is it or how is it that this could be of service to my client? Right? And what came through is like, well, you're having a very human experience. So it's like, well, where could being this human be of service to my client? And something clicked on an unconscious level. And it was like, I knew I could show up like in the worst of myself and still be profoundly human. And there was something that I could utilize and use in that, something that could be of benefit. I could sit with them and maybe we would sit there as, me and the client as two broken souls and find a way forward together, but I knew there was a way that I could kind of make it work for those sessions. So I did that day and I think I did the next day. And then, I was saying to Lexi, I can't take time off. There's people relying on me. So she quietly made the phone calls and made sure that I took the time off because that's what needed to happen. and this is Erickson's, it's been a big influence on me since way back, is Erickson's utilization principle, right? Or the point I was saying about Nassim Nicholas Taleb, leverage the upsides, mitigate the downsides, whatever. Erickson is use everything, right? There is nothing that cannot be used. And if you have that mentality, how can I use this? How can I create with this? How can I, I think that's a very, very good philosophy for change work, but I think it's a very good philosophy for life as well, beyond change work.
I remember, I don't know if this is relevant, but one of the very first times I talked to you, I was a big fan of all your work. I'd listened to tons of podcasts, and however I had held you in my mind. And I asked you, I was like, hey, for the Hypnosis Without Trance book, have you ever done an audiobook for it? And you were like, yeah, I've recorded it, but I lost my mojo and I haven't finished editing it.
Right.
And I was like, oh, he's human. Oh, it was a very immediately relatable human moment. And I was like, oh, okay.
Right.
I don't know the relevance of that, but it just made me think of that.
I think it's very relevant for change work, and particularly people who have come into change work perhaps from an NLP perspective, because NLP is kind of like all about wizardry.
Yeah.
The first two books are the structure of magic, volume 1, the structure of magic, volume 2. And there's this idea that you're there and you see the system and you manipulate the bits and, and you're reprogramming and all of this. And that idea of there's no such thing as a resistant client, only an inflexible practitioner. And it's all about, it's very much, from in Jungian terms, it will be the magician archetype, right? Now, the magician is a manipulator. The magician is a performer. Now, I love the magician archetype. Don't get me wrong. It's a powerful archetype. There's a lot to be drawn from it. But it isn't the totality of everything. So when it comes to doing change work, there is something incredibly powerful about being human. You can have all of those magician skills, but don't lose your humanity. And I think also there's a tendency for a lot of change workers and therapists as well, possibly even more so with kind of regular, properly trained therapists, to play one up, to hold like a one-up status position. Mm-hmm. Right? Now, I always play one across. Right? Always one across, never one up. So I'm never claiming to be the authority. I've got to be grounded. I can't be insecure and unsure. That would be being one down.
Right.
But I want to play one across. I want to be human because I am human. I'll say like, well, it seems to me that you are a human being, I'll say, which means that just like me, you're an incurable up to one degree or another. Right. Now, I genuinely believe this. We are always fallible. We are always screw ups. We are always mess ups. We stuff up over and over again. I will stuff up before this day is out. I'll blunder somehow. I'll do, and to hold ourselves to some superhuman standard is neurosis producing. So I don't want to be there trying to claim to be the person that doesn't screw up, that doesn't mess up, the person that's got it all nailed down or anything like that, because then I just come across as a bit of a dick, really, because that's what I would be being. I don't have the answers. I have some knowledge. And by the way, when I work with the military vets, again, they're coming in. They don't know me as a hypnotist. They don't know anything like that. I often say to them, I say, I'm not a psychotherapist. I'm not a counselor. I'm not a psychologist or anything like that. I say, I'm not knocking those things. They're probably all very valid. That's just not what I do. It's not what I am. My title here is coach. And what that really means is I'm somebody who knows a thing or two about how minds work, and maybe I've got something that can help you out, right? So I play really low bar. I don't like swagger in the wizard's cape or anything like that.
Right.
I'm playing a really low bar that I'm setting at the front end of the session, and they're not coming in with glorious expectations of hypnotic wizardry. Well, the good thing about setting the really low bar is, number one, you're not being a big blowing your own trumpet kind of superior individual. But number two, it actually makes it pretty easy to clear that bar, quite frankly. And if you clear the bar and you get a victory, victories beget victories. If you set a really high bar and you got 15 minutes into this session, you will be cured of all your problems. Well, it's very easy to fall below the bar, and then you lose any purchase you had to make further changes. So I like to play a sort of lower bar, more relaxed bar, but I'm doing it in a grounded way. That's really important. Somebody can say, can you help me out with this? And you can go, well, I don't know. I can try. That would be really ungrounded.
Okay.
Right. It might be honest, but it would be really ungrounded. But if somebody says, can you help me out with this? And you go, well, I don't know. But I've got a good sense that whatever it is that you have been caught up in here is definitely something you can go beyond. Right. Now, I'm keeping a loose frame around that. I'm not saying this is the specific outcome we're going to get. Saying whatever you've been caught up in is definitely something you can go beyond. Because I'm standing in a place of truth, but I'm not claiming a precise knowledge that I don't have. Right? So that, to me, is being honest and grounded at the same time. People respond to you being grounded. You can say whatever you want. You can say, I don't know. I literally have no clue. I've never worked with anything like this before. You can say that so long as you're grounded in yourself, so long as you're solid in yourself. People buy what's solid. Right. If you're like, well, I don't know. I've never, that's all ungrounded. It doesn't work.
Right. Well, I guess that's interesting because a lot of the traditional sort of hypnosis training is you have to be the authority. You have to come in with this certain level of, it's kind of almost the opposite of what you're saying.
There's a subtlety in it. There was a distinction somebody shared with me years ago. It's being authoritative without being authoritarian. Right. So if you're playing one up status-wise, you're acting superior, you're being pushy, whatever, that will play well with a certain sort of person.
Okay.
But you're probably not serving them in perpetuating that pattern of subordination in their lives anyway, if you do want to play that dynamic, right? So I'm going to suggest, I don't want to play that. Here's a distinction that the improv teacher, Keith Johnstone, uses. He calls it happy high status. Right. And this is a similar idea to one across. So what he would say is when people normally do a status play, it goes like this. I'm up, you're down. I'm above you. That's how high, and that's how people normally play high status. It's that superior position. What Keith Johnstone called happy high status is when you go, I'm up, you're up. We're both up here. You and I are up here. Now, he said this is the key to highly charismatic individuals. They're people that play happy high status when you meet them, right? People who are one-on-one. Whether that's true or not, that's Keith Johnstone's impression. So you don't have to be superior. You can be grounded, right? You can go, look, I know some things that may be extremely useful for you, right? Can you help me with this? I don't know, but I've helped people with very similar things before. That's a very grounded answer. Grounding, is powerful. It's more powerful than playing superior.
Is the one up, one across, one down, is that come from some kind of gameplay theory? I've just never heard it worded that way, the way you say it.
It comes from somewhere. I can tell you that. I don't know who I first heard put it that way. I've had an interest for many years in status dynamics. And partly this is one of the reasons I like Keith Johnstone as an impro teacher. Impro, like most people will say improv, but Keith Johnstone's school was always impro with no V on it.
I see.
And he's a UK-based improvisation teacher who places a lot of store on status play and status dynamics, because he says if you understand status dynamics, you can make any improvised scene interesting, because there's always status dynamics at play. So I kind of learned a lot from Keith Johnstone about status and status dynamics. Also, I used to be, for years myself, what Keith Johnstone would call a habitual low status player, right? So this is a defensive way of being in the world. It's like, to caricature it, it will be like, hey, I'm a nice guy, don't hurt me. Mm-hmm. Hey, you're up there, I'm down here, but it's all right, don't squash me. So I used to be, when I had a lot of social anxiety and stuff, I would play low status. And when I discovered that I was doing this, I became a witness to that pattern in myself. I was like, well, I don't want to do that, because that's not helping me create the outcomes I want to create in life. So I used NLP methodologies to shift how I played status-wise initially, and then I worked using 3 principle stuff to create more grounding and groundedness in myself.
It's made me think of, no one taught me this, but I just caught myself doing it one day, that if we get to an end of a session where a client has had a substantial shift of somewhat, and they'll say something, they mean it in the most positive way, like, wow, you're a wizard, or you're magical, or something to me. And I always immediately said, I just want to make sure you understand you did every bit of that. I just facilitated.
I mean, I'm a big advocate of that. In my Hypnosis Without Trance book, somebody hated this. There's a review on there where someone's like, this idea of operator and cooperator is childish, because the classic nomenclature in hypnosis is the hypnotist and the subject. It's just like, there's a kind of inherent status sort of flavoring built into the terminology, I think, of the old school hypnosis terminology. So for me, with Hypnosis Without Trance, I use the term operator and cooperator. And by that, I don't mean the one who cooperates. I make this clear in the book. I mean it like pilot and co-pilot.
Right.
So if you look at pilot and co-pilot, you could say, well, the pilot is superior to the co-pilot, but they really want to work together as a team. If I'm working with a client, I'm quite clear that it's down to me to be the leader of the session. Right, I'm the leader of the unfolding dynamic. So I'm not playing passive. So playing one across isn't playing passive. It's not like, oh, no, well, whatever you want. And there are decisions to be made sometimes upon when you let a client take you away from where you're going, or where you go, no, and you show a little bit more leadership and we're going to come back to this point and we're going to stay with this for a bit. But to me, it's definitely about a cooperative partnership. But my role there, the client is the expert on their life. And I am the expert on processes and communication and facilitation. So we have different sets of expertise, and we're going to bring those expertise together. It's not that one set of expertise is superior to the other. They're both necessary for us to do the work. We just have different expertise sets. So we've got to co-create with those. To me, it's not just co-creation of me and the client. It's me and the client and life unfolding around us and all of our past experiences. And, and I'm open, if I'm going to get a bit esoteric for a bit, I'm open to the idea there might be, I don't know this for sure, maybe something like Rupert Sheldrake's morphic fields, or that maybe there are non-localized memories. I'm open to all of that stuff. I neither affirm nor deny it. I'm just open to the possibility. But I do like to sit in a space with the client and allow everything that can participate to be in the space, to participate in the co-creative sort of flow of it.
If I was going to say I was going to do a process on myself, no one else there, or I'm going to do a process with someone staring at me the whole time and they're not involved in any way, but they're there. Will I get a different result? Will that result in something different happening just simply because someone else is there watching?
Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely. And I would say that reasonably emphatically because I think every difference makes a difference. And sometimes that difference is small, sometimes that difference is big. Sometimes we can find ways of negating that difference if we don't want that to be a variable that affects things. But each and every moment is unique. It has the variables at play that are at play in that moment. Everything makes a difference. And this is why people say, when you're doing change work on Zoom, is it different from when you're working? Yes, it's different. It's absolutely different. Is it better? Is it worse? Can't say. It's different. But there are different variables that need to be worked with. There are all sorts of things that I never do on Zoom that I would do routinely if I'm in a three-dimensional space with people. I prefer working in a three-dimensional space. I'll be completely honest about that. Does it make my work worse? I don't know is the answer. I've not noticed a significant difference.
Is there anything else you wanted to say about that idea of doing the work for yourself versus helping clients?
I'm looking over at my whiteboard right now, and there's a little slogan on it. It says, self-help beats therapy. And I wrote that down because I was going to do a YouTube video on it, but I never did. It just went up on the board, and it's stayed there ever since. The reason I was saying that is because I'm not saying it's true. That was just the angle for the video.
Right.
So, why self-help beats therapy? I really think there's something especially empowering about learning to work with your own experience, your own mind flow, to be able to readjust yourself, your patterning, your processes, these kind of things. Having that capability is way more generative than going in and getting kind of worked on by somebody. But it's not to everybody's taste. It's a considerable amount of work to be done there. It's like, I love martial arts, but most people, there's a lot of people that go, I'd love to do a martial art. I'd love to learn martial arts. You say, well, why don't you? It's like, I don't really have the time or whatever. And they're just not, they don't love it enough to make the commitment to do the work, to learn the skill set. But I do think there's something really, really valuable and really deeply empowering about learning to do that.
So, there you go. Hope you enjoyed that. I really like this concept of playing one across instead of one up. I'd never heard James talk about that before, and I found it really interesting. I'm going to be thinking about that one for a little while. If you'd like to get in touch, you can reach us here at changeworkingpod@gmail.com. Give us your thoughts, any feedback, ideas for topics. And if you have any questions, we'll try to answer those on a future episode. See you next time.
Changeworking is produced by Ruckus Sky. For information on training, go to clientshifts.com.